Today on Sugar Spun Run, we'll be making Oreo cupcakes. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, Sam here, and today I am sharing a super fun cupcake recipe with you. Now to get started, you'll want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and grab a large mixing bowl. To make our cupcake batter, we'll start with 3/4 cup of granulated sugar. Add 6 tablespoons of vegetable or canola oil, 1/3 cup of sour cream. Sour cream helps give our cupcakes a lot of moisture and a little extra depth of flavor. You'll also need 1½ teaspoons of vanilla extract. Because I like these cupcakes to be bright and white to have that nice contrast against the Oreo cookie pieces, I prefer to use clear vanilla. Stir these ingredients together until everything is well combined. Those of you who've made my Oreo cake recipe might notice that today's recipe is a little bit different. This one has been specifically developed to make great fluffy cupcakes. Set your wet ingredients aside, and in a separate bowl, you're going to combine 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, a teaspoon of baking powder, just 1/8 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Whisk these together until they're nicely combined. Now measure out 1/3 cup of whole milk, and we are going to alternate adding the dry ingredients and the milk to our wet ingredients from earlier. I always start and end with the dry ingredients. I'm just stirring in the flour until it's mostly combined, and then I'll add some of the milk. You want to be careful not to overmix the batter, which is why we're just using a spatula to stir everything together rather than using an electric mixer. If you overdo it with this batter, you'll end up with dense, dry cupcakes. We're almost done with our cupcake batter, but you can't forget about the eggs. Now for today's recipe, we are just using egg whites. This is going to help keep the cupcakes a beautiful bright white color, and it's also going to add some moisture and help keep those cupcakes nice and light and fluffy. Now, we're not just going to be using straight egg whites. What we're going to do is we're going to use an electric mixer to whip them to stiff peaks before we add them to our batter. You'll have achieved stiff peaks once your egg whites have increased in volume by a lot. They're opaque and bright white, and when you pull the beater out of the batter, that peak that forms right there, it holds tall. It doesn't dissolve into itself or flop over. Now we'll add these egg whites into our cake batter. And since we just went through all of that work to whip them to stiff peaks, we want to be really gentle with our spatula, folding the ingredients together. That way we don't deflate them any more than we need to. That would completely defeat the purpose. Now, of course, you need some Oreos. We're going to be using 8 Oreo cookies today and breaking them into small pieces and gently folding them into our batter. I like to break these cookies by hand just so I have some more discernible chunks in there, but if you prefer, you can place them in a Ziploc bag and smack them a couple times with a rolling pin instead. Just gently fold those cookies into your batter. Now you can evenly divide your batter into a 12-count muffin tin that's been lined with cupcake liners. I like to use an ice cream scoop just because it makes the job a little bit neater. Now take these over to your 350 degree Fahrenheit preheated oven, where they will need to bake for about 17 minutes, or until the tops lightly spring back when touched and a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean or with a few moist crumbs. It's always important to let your cupcakes cool completely before you cover them with frosting. While they're cooling, you can go ahead and prepare that frosting. Now, I love to use a batch of my favorite cream cheese frosting, which I will link to in the recipe below. But to turn things up a notch and make them a little bit more Oreo cupcake appropriate, I like to stir in 6 pulverized Oreo cookies. Now, if you're going to be piping the frosting on top of your cupcakes, it's so important that those cookies be really well crushed and there are no chunks of cookie left. Otherwise, it's going to clog up your piping tip. I'm using my favorite piping tip today, the Attico 848, and I will make sure to link to that in the printable recipe for you. And that is how you make Oreo cupcakes completely from scratch. If you enjoyed this recipe, you'll definitely want to make sure to check out my Oreo cake recipe as well. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. They're really good.